Well, this is my narrative of day 102, recording this several days later. And I couldn't do the normal telling the story with video and still photos because I had to keep my phone powered off virtually the entire day just to conserve battery for emergency purposes only, because I was continuing much further than I had planned on going. So this was the day of two passes, Glen Pass and then Forester Pass. Once again, I got up pre-dawn, saw the Big Dipper standing on its handle end, if you will, in Orion, the opposite way. I still could see the planet with its bright star conjunction, and I don't know what either one of those were, but it was closer to the Big Dipper end of the sky, shall we say. Got going as soon as I could above Ray Lakes, and going up over Glen Pass. I was just following the trail. I didn't have my gut hooks on, wasn't navigating, and I started to get the feeling of this is how they did it in the old school. You weren't pulling out your camera 100 times a day, your phone, pulling out 100 times a day to look at gut hooks. You know, where am I? How many more switchbacks do I have to go? Am I 100 feet off the trail or am I not 100 feet off the trail? So I had to pay more attention. And so I'm navigating basically by signposts at trail intersections. And as I climbed up out of Ray Lakes and I'm going up, I can see kind of, where am I going to go? Am I going to go left? Am I going to go right? And as I went up, I thought, this isn't going to work, because either way, I'm going to get cliffed out, meaning that there's a sheer cliff that the trail would have to run into if I went left or right, if the trail went left or right. And as it was, the trail basically just goes up this face, way, 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 way up high, much higher than I thought it was going to go, through a great engineering feat, for the trail originators, and then popped over Glen Pass. But it was very interesting because I'm thinking, where is this trail going? Glen Pass, a wonderful pass, and then I went down. It was a little more looser scree on the south side, and I could tell that many of the earlier hikers that were going through, they had created, shall we say, their own trail through the snow. And then as this snow got compacted and more people kept following that it basically created secondary trails that were only exposed once all the snow was gone. And I forgot to mention, heading up Glen Pass on the north-facing slope, there was a fairly large snowfield that had actually 3 paths coming down, and they all sort of arced like this and then came down onto the trail or came down onto the lower area almost vertically. And that's sort of the way that people heading the opposite way, who are breaking new trail, trying to figure out the best way to negotiate this snowfield when the snow was much deeper, ended up doing that. But the result was, no matter which one of the 3 that I took, basically I was going vertical, and the snow was very icy at this point. And it was very steep. If I had had microspikes, I would have stopped to put them on, but I didn't, and I survived. But it was very, I had to be very cautious going over that. So then I came down over Glen Pass, went down through this beautiful long valley, and the second, and I was really trying to make tracks because in order to not completely run out of food, on this long, extended space between town stops, I was going to have to do 2 passes. And the second pass that day was Forester Pass, which is the highest point on the PCT. As I was approaching Forester Pass, for the life of me, it looked like the hut at Muir Trail, at Muir Pass from I think 2 or 3 days prior to that, except 20 times higher, where each one of the stone blocks that had been used for the structure at Muir Pass was now just these, enormous things. But it looked like, a huge version of the hut built by giants at the head of the valley. Now, as is often the case when you're in the mountains, from one perspective it looks one way, and from a different perspective it looks completely different. And as a matter of fact, as the trail goes up and up and up, it ends up running at the top of what looked like this enormous round structure, round stone structure, that ended up being sort of an oblong kind of thing that you couldn't tell from way down in the valley. The most memorable part of Forester Pass, however, was this long, long snowbank, still existent, here in October. And as I transitioned from the rock, from the soil to the snow, and I started going up in these enormous, what amount to sun cups. And I could tell, people had been hiking up this many times. There was a lot of dirt in these sun cups, and I made it up, I don't know, 100 feet, 200 feet, 300 feet, something like that, going up the path, figuring this is where it goes. And then I looked down, and essentially 25 feet on a sheer cliff of snow, I could see the trail. Well, I launched an F-bomb or 3 or 4, and I'm like, how do I get down there? There's no way I can negotiate this steep snow cliff, and if I continue up this quarter-mile snowbank, it's only going to get worse. So I took that opportunity to pull out my phone, fire it up, and I opened up Guthooks, and I opened up the comments on Guthooks for Forester Pass. And as a matter of fact, somebody just, a week before or whatever, was telling the southbounders, hey, when you get to this point, backtrack and go all the way down below the snowbank, and then you will see a secondary trail that has been basically produced just by people walking it along the snowbank that will connect to the real PCT. And I'm so glad I did that, because and oh, by the way, this is now getting late in the day and completely exposed. There's no shelter up there at all. So made it up to Forester Pass, probably an hour before sundown. I was struck how well there was no snow at all in the chute. So at Forester Pass itself, there's this chute that fills up with snow every year. And if you slip and fall on that and go down the chute, there's no hope. You're dead, which makes it so treacherous for the early people going through. There's no snow there, so I was able to go through on dry ground, and it was not an issue. Coming down, once again, I could see these sort of secondary trails that had been produced by people early on, walking on the snow, that when the snow melted away, people still kept walking down there. So it sort of looked like people cutting switchbacks, kind of, sort of. But it was pretty easy for me to stay on the trail itself. And then there's this long, heading southbound from there, there's this long, long, long meadow. Pretty cruisy, but once again, there's no shelter there. And so I was trying to make it down into the trees, but I was going as fast as I could to make use of the remaining light. And I was able to get to a campground there, and there were a couple tents already there, and a bear box, and I was able to pitch my tent basically in the last light and then by headlamp. So big day, 2 passes, a little bit of drama. Had to pull out my phone once and fire it up, but I'm so glad I did, because I was able to see, not just using to navigate, but to find the comments crowdsourced from other hikers on how to negotiate this very, very otherwise treacherous situation. So that's my narrative of day 102.